Oh, Papa, please don't die, Papa.
I'm just daydreaming about a day when there won't be any Imperial fascists running the galaxy. So get out of here, kid. Take these Death Star plans and run along now and go play with your rebel friends. How's it going, everybody? Today I'm going to take a look at some Rogue One Star Wars Black Series figures. So given the timing of this video, as you're probably well aware, the Andor series is just about to wrap up. The last 3 episodes of Andor have yet to air. That's coming really soon. So it seems like a good time to revisit these Rogue One figures. So the showrunner of Andor, Tony Gilroy, has said that basically when this series wraps, it'll give you a completely new perspective on Rogue One. Once this series wraps up, it sounds like that's going to be a time to definitely go back and rewatch Rogue One. That's what inspired me to do this set of figures to review. These are all the Rogue One characters that I have collected for Star Wars Black Series. There may be 1 or 2 others that I pick up along the way, but basically this is the bunch that I have right now. So yes, this will be a supersized review. I'm going to review all of these figures. Not doing them all today, but I am going to split this up in 2 parts. We're going to be doing the Rebels. That'll be part 1 for today, and then we're also going to do the Imperials later. Before the opening shot here, basically, I just wanted to line them all up here and show you what I've got. These guys are going to be coming later. We're going to take them out of frame for now. And we're going to focus on these 4. And just in case you need an introduction to these characters, you got Bohdi Rook. He's a former Imperial pilot who defected to the Rebel cause. You got Galen Erso, a very important figure in Star Wars lore. Basically, he's the chief engineer who architected the Death Star and the one who kind of had a guilty conscience or whatever at some point and found the flaw in the Death Star and more or less gave the rebels a blueprint for, to take down that battle station. And of course, you have what is absolutely without question a fan favorite, K-2SO. This is an Imperial droid. It's an enforcer / crowd control type droid, and shown to very brutal effect in Andor. And he basically gets captured by Andor and reprogrammed to serve as his sidekick. And of course, last but not least, more or less the focus of Rogue One, I would say, is Jyn Erso. She's the daughter of Galen Erso, and she's the one who is the key to uncovering the Death Star, the weakness in the Death Star, the plans that her dad had secretly set aside for her to discover and to hand over to the rebels. So it's an interesting cast of characters. I may pick up a couple other Rogue One type characters sometime or another. It depends on if I'm in the mood to pick them up or not. But like I said, we're going to be doing a review of each one of these figures, and we're going to start one at a time here. I'm going to start with Bohdi Rook. So kicking it off here, we'll just say this figure has really, really good styling and detail. Just all around a really nicely done figure. Definitely one of the best in the Rogue One series that I am aware of. He has a very accurate head sculpt for the actor. I forget the dude's name. It's Raz something or other. Yeah, I mean, just this beautiful looking utility vest. You got all these pockets here, just crammed with stuff, all kinds of little gadgets and things, painted in detail and that kind of thing. And this backpack here, which is sort of a cable. It is a part of the plot in Rogue One, and I forget exactly what the nature of that plot point is. He has to connect data ports together, and more or less they're a distance apart, so he's basically got to run out this cable and plug this thing right here into a data port. And I forget exactly what that situation is. If I remember correctly, to get a direct line to talk to the Rebel Alliance who's fighting a battle overhead up in space directly over the planet Scarif. So something to that effect. I could be wrong. I forget exactly what that plot point is, but yeah, there again, beautiful styling. He's even got his whole Imperial jumpsuit on here, with the Imperial crest on it. Got some nice looking goggles on his head. Yeah, beautiful sculpting and all that kind of thing on this backpack for sure. Got all these awesome details, like these sculpted in little parts here. Not sure what you would call that. And the cool thing about this plug is it can be plugged into the backpack too. He doesn't have to hold it or anything. So this is absolutely a one-of-a-kind piece. Blaster here, and his finger can rest right on the trigger. Beautifully sculpted for sure. You got awesome texture and detailing here, everything down to the pockets and the wrinkles in his pants. And yeah, this backpack can actually be removed. I'm not going to do that today. You pretty much have to throw his shoulders back and then, pull a strap off of him. A little bit of a chore to get it off, but it can be done. Just to show you how this backpack is constructed here, it is essentially a cloth cable, and there's a spool that it's all connected to here. And I'm not going to unspool this entire thing, but there's even some detail inside the spool. It runs out for a full length. Underneath that, there's even then some molded in detail of a cable underneath it, so it more or less implies that there's quite a bit more cord to go in there. One thing about this backpack is it only fits on one way, so it's a little bit of a trick to get it to latch on there. But once you get it on it, it's a fairly tight seal. I think that's about right. And there again, it'll come out quite a ways. I'm not going to pull it all the way out, but I want to say it'll give you about 6 inches of cord or something like that. Might actually be quite a bit longer. So yeah, he can definitely hold his accessories there. As far as the goggles, one thing that is, I don't know if I would necessarily call that bothersome as much as just the detail that seemed a little overdone is, yes, he wears goggles in the movie. That's basically this dude's signature look, but they're super glued on his head, and even that detail of the strap is painted on here. I kind of feel like that wasn't totally necessary. I kind of wonder if they could have found another way to do that, or if nothing else, to actually give him separate set of goggles that could be pulled on and off his head or whatever. But yeah, minor quibble, still definitely a signature look, and that's how you know Bohdi Rook. He's got those goggles on his forehead. I'm not even sure if he actually wears them on his face anytime during the movie. At least I don't remember him doing that. But yeah, he's got a pretty good set of articulation here. I mean, standard set, leg can kick out, whatever. You got an ankle tilt, can turn his thighs sideways and whatever. Definitely using the newer style where pin is essentially hidden, so that's definitely a nice detail. So you got pretty good range of ankle tilt and all that kind of stuff. Forward and backward, sideways. It's exactly what you need to be able to pose this figure in a lot of different ways. Yeah, pretty good range of motion on the arms. You can actually get his elbow quite a ways up there. Well past 90 degrees. You can have him look like he's singing, like he's Elvis. Tell me, baby. Hello, what brings rebels around these here parts? Hey, man, I'm ready to join the Rebel Alliance. Y'all got any peanut butter and banana sandwiches? That's the only thing I eat is peanut butter and banana sandwiches. Or he's sipping on a cold one. You never know. Whatever you want to do with this figure. So, anyways, yeah. Got a pretty good set of elbow movement there. He can surrender, if that's such a thing for Rebels. Or be a skydiver. You never know. Got a full range of motion with the head there. And this is one that has that sort of double neck articulation, so the actual head can tilt up and down and swivel any way you need to independently of the neck, and the neck can rotate up and down too. And that's something else I would say is that his ponytail does not impede his range of motion at all, so that's kind of nice. Be that as it may, I think it's time to give this dude a rating. And just to recap on my rating system, it's a rating system of 5 categories with up to 5 points each for a potential total of anything between 0 to 25 points. So let's jump right in. As far as details in this figure, yeah, I would say this is pretty much spot on. Don't think there's much of anything else they could have done to make it like more accurate or better detailed or whatever. I would say this is perfect. As far as articulation, it's a great range of motion. Definitely impressed by the fact that they're kind of shying away from doing those pin joints and that kind of thing. This is obviously later in the Star Wars Black Series evolution of that line, so they've managed to make some significant improvements with their engineering on this stuff. Accessories, totally fine. Obviously he doesn't have a lot with him. He's got a blaster and this backpack thing. At least the backpack is a one-of-a-kind item. I have to give this figure props for that. Quality of the figure is really good. Maybe not quite the best that I've seen, but it's pretty damn good. This is definitely one that even if you're like a casual Star Wars fan or whatever, one that I think would be worth picking up on the basis of quality alone. For accuracy of the figure, yeah, I would say, again, this is definitely spot on for the way he's presented in the movie and that kind of thing. So, yeah, it's just all around a great figure. So I'm going to give this a total of 21 out of 25. So, yeah, really happy with this figure. Did not pay a premium price or even retail because I bought him fairly recently and he was kind of marked down or whatever. Very good value for what this thing is. So that is Bohdi Rook. And we're going to move on with Galen Erso. Now, I get the way it goes with this line is some of these figures, even if they're fairly important, are kind of essentially there to fill out the line, so to speak. Galen definitely has a very prominent, important role in the movie Rogue One, but as far as the figure goes, there's not much that they had that they can really do for him. Yeah, he's got on his military green uniform and some designation that he's a scientist or a science officer or something to that effect, notably with this pale blue collar and shoulder piece. And also insignia. I believe that's something that's designated like an engineer or Imperial science officer or something to that effect. Not really a whole lot going for this figure. But I would say that the face sculpt is really, really good. This is like a little bitty Mads Mikkelsen, so very nicely done there. Certainly one of the better ones in the Star Wars Black Series line. You know, especially when you have face sculpt that is based on an actor and not just a, you know, kind of a B-list player, background character, that kind of thing. It's kind of important to get it right, and I think they really did a fantastic job with this dude. But that's the highlight of this figure. The downside is definitely using some older style figure engineering and a lot of reused parts from existing figures. As an example, got these old style pin joints. One thing that's kind of nice about it is it can kick back so he could be kneeling if you want him to. I mean, he's got a pretty good set of articulation points here. Torso rotation, again, you got the double neck joint there, so that's pretty good. Good shoulder movement all the way around. Can turn his elbow, his wrists, they work really well. So there's, yeah, quite a bit of range of motion. As far as a figure like this, it basically doesn't come with anything and has very little purpose to be included in an action figure line other than to sell more shit. I mean, you could definitely get him in some kung fu poses if you wanted to, so. And for all his shortcomings, I would even say that his balance is pretty damn good. So certainly not an action figure of the action figure variety, but he is very well balanced. And this is done without any kind of a stand, obviously. This cat is fast as lightning. But getting back on the theme of reused parts, you know, you're going to find that figures are very often reusing the same basic parts. I mean, he's got the same belt buckle. One interesting bit about this figure is his hands do have some nice detail on them, but if you look at them really close, they are weirdly wrinkled, almost like he's a burn victim. And here's kind of the joke on you as a collector, is they reused Tarkin's hands for this dude. If you look at, you know, various angles here, those hands are identical. So basically, you've got a middle-aged dude here with, you know, not quite so saggy skin, and he's got these weird old man burn victim hands, so... I mean, that's about as cheap as it gets, I think. I don't know. It just seems like they could have went with something a little bit different to make this character a little bit more accurate. I don't know. You know, and I don't have another figure handy to show that off, but obviously with this type of pants, with this double pin joint and these type of dress shoes and that kind of thing, that is definitely coming off of some other Imperial officer. Don't know specifically which one. But yeah, some shortcomings in that regard. Yeah, as far as the paint application here on the collar and the shoulders here, I mean, it looks fine, but I don't know. There's just something about having a large piece like that that's just completely painted over that doesn't quite hit right with me. It's a little bit meh in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, that's all about the quality and the articulation of this figure. Let's talk about his accessory. He comes with one damn little thing. This is the Death Star plans that were put on a disc, taken off of a giant Imperial server, and basically broadcast and copied to the Rebel force that's hovering over the planet. But there's a problem with this. Yes, Galen Erso documented the fatal flaw inside of the Death Star. But, again, as you see in the movie, that was all stored on a massive server. He at no time actually handles one of these discs. This was just something to give him an excuse to have something. Other than that, there's really no purpose for this figure. One way or the other, with regard to the plot of the movie, it's not like he ever burned this thing on a CD and said, "Here, kid, take this." So it's kind of a cool little accessory, but certainly not accurate to the plot of the movie. And that's something else, is I would say I've had this disc slip out of my hand a few times and had to go chase it across the floor and that kind of thing. It is a very small accessory, obviously. This is an interesting case where if you actually lose this little piece, then the character suddenly becomes a little more accurate. It's just kind of a weird mix of justifying a figure to have a figure in the line and then having an accessory that has nothing to do with him specifically. One way or the other, it's time to give Galen Erso his due with a figure rating. So I've got to ding him on detail for having too many reused parts. His articulation is pretty darn good. I mean, even for a figure that's using a lot of older character parts, a lot of recycling and whatever, articulation is outstanding. I mean, he may not be an action figure. He has basically no justification to actually be included in the line, but you could actually treat this dude as an action figure if you wanted to. As far as accessories, I've got to give him a 0 for what he has for accessories because they're not even accurate to the figure. Plain and simple, he does not handle or use or interact with in any way that data disc in the movie. So that is strictly some other characters. As far as the quality of the figure, I wouldn't say there's anything that's really lacking necessarily. I mean, it's perfectly fine as far as that goes. And as far as accuracy to the character, I mean, I got to ding him a couple of different ways for having, one, old man hands that belong to a septuagenarian, and also for having that data disc that just does not belong with the character at all. So one way or the other, I do think this is a good character to include with a collection, but I definitely would not have paid retail for this. Or at least I would have felt a little cheated if I had. Ultimately, I'm giving Galen Erso a total of 10 out of 25. Yeah, all in all, pretty good figure. I just wouldn't pay 25 bucks for him is all. Moving down the line, we've got Jyn Erso, arguably the central figure of the show and definitely featured in all the trailers and that kind of thing. I would say her actress, I think her name is Felicity Jones, got more screen time than any other actor in the show. First thing I got to get right out of the bat here, I've got to say this. They're using the older style print technique here where she sort of has a little bit of a doll face. And I don't know, that's kind of a disturbing look to me. It's just very generic and bland. Brought to you by Fisher-Price. I feel like they somewhat went to an extreme amount to make her super skinny. She's got really tiny spindly legs. I'm not so sure any other figure in the line has skinny legs like this character. Maybe Leia, and, you know, come to think of it, probably Mon Mothma too, except hers are, of course, are hidden by those huge plastic robes, but that's another story. Even to the point where they gave her extremely delicate, tiny little fingers. I'm just not so sure these fingers are going to be durable enough to hold up over time. And yet again, seems to be another thing in Star Wars lore, fingerless gloves. Everybody in Rogue One and Andor, they got them some fingerless gloves. Overall, I would definitely say this character has some decent styling. One thing I'm not really a fan of is this headscarf. It's just, oh God. It really restricts her head movement when it's on. You can actually take it off, and boy, is it a pain in the ass to take off. So I'm going to give that a shot right now, hopefully without popping her head off. I'm telling you, it's a chore, man, to get this thing off. Obviously, it's just one big chunky plastic piece, and to be perfectly honest with you, when I put this thing on a shelf, this is going in a drawer. I'm not interested in this accessory at all. But other than that, this figure does have some very nice detailing on it. I really love this jacket on here. That can probably also be taken off. Yeah, I would say it definitely can. Not going to try to do that today, because that kind of thing probably does stress plastic on a piece like this. But it definitely is a separate piece. And it's got some really nice styling in here. I mean, you've got all this texture in here. This is accurate to the character in the movie. These big pockets, this texture here going around the shoulders, that kind of thing. Nice stripe styling and texture on the undershirt here. And you got a pretty cool hip holster here too. So that is definitely a nice detail. And of course it is functional. You can get that blaster out of her hand and put that in there. Even has a little latch on there, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, moving further down, got some nice pants here. Nice detailing on these pants and the boots, that kind of thing. Articulation on this figure is pretty good. I wouldn't say there's anything missing. Although again, being a super skinny little figure with smaller, more delicate joints, I would handle this with more care than any other figure for sure. Does have a good range of motion on the head. However, one thing to note is that it does not have a double neck like many of the other figures. In fact, the neck itself has a paint application, and if you look at it, there's some missing paint on here. So it's just kind of a little bit of a weird look. Not the highest quality production, I would say, as far as that goes. Yeah, great range of motion in the shoulders. Can pivot all the way around. You got good elbow rotation. The wrist can pivot up and down, actually to a greater degree than many other Star Wars figures. Got some good hip rotation here. As far as all of its mobility, I would say this Jyn Erso figure, there's definitely nothing lacking as far as this one goes. So it can be posed right up there with the best of them for sure. And again, getting back to the delicate nature of this figure, I would definitely say that for something like this, you probably want to be more careful about how you're manipulating these joints. Probably get your fingers right on the joints as you're bending it. so you don't wind up cranking it too hard or something like that. All in all, it's a pretty good figure if you could get past the face sculpt. You know, obviously with some other flaws and that kind of thing, but definitely something I'm not sorry that I bought for sure. And she even has a range of motion where you can make her look like she's drawing her pistol. Now, as far as this gun, do not know if this is a repeat from any other mold, but it is nicely detailed. You got the exhaust on the barrel here, that's kind of cool. A little bit of silver paint application and yeah, all around nice styling on this piece. One interesting thing I will point out is they have the torso articulation up on the chest of this figure, so that is an interesting little bit of detail. Maybe that's just how they had to do it to make this figure work, I don't know. So yeah, moving on to a rating, I would say this figure has some pretty good detailing, with some flaws, of course. Using the older style printing technique again on the face, so it has this kind of a doll face look to it. But as far as the jacket, the other attire, the hip holster, all the other stuff, the boots, the pants, etc., all the detailing and coloring and all that kind of stuff, I would say are pretty nicely done. So I would say it ranks right up there in the middle. Articulation, pretty good. And nothing to complain about. Some of the joints are a little bit loose on this, and there again, it is kind of a more delicate figure, so kind of have to be a little more careful with this one, I would say. As far as accessories, not a fan of that scarf, of course. Does have the one little pistol. And there again, things like jackets and hip holsters and that kind of thing that are separate pieces, I would count as part of the accessory pack with a figure. The quality is fine. There again, some loose joints, a little bit of janky paint applications and that kind of thing. Nothing that really knocks this figure out of the park for me. As far as character accuracy, there again, it's that face sculpt. It's just weirdly generic and doesn't really look like the actress or whatever. And you can contrast that perfectly with Galen Erso, who has a fantastic face sculpt. All in all, I'm going to give this figure 12 out of 25. So let's look at Jyn Erso, and we're going to move on to the fourth and final figure for this review. And that is K-2SO. First of all, I would say what a fantastic figure design to begin with. The genius designers at Industrial Light and Magic really made something fantastic and unique. And fun fact, K-2SO was originally supposed to be based on a protocol droid type body. They dug in a little bit deeper and just decided to do something a little more imposing and unique. And yeah, this figure is huge. I mean, he's basically Wookiee sized, and you put him up to an average height type character, and he absolutely towers over almost any other figure. So what you get with this dude is a pretty decent range of motion. I mean, the wrist can swivel any direction that you need it to, and rotate, of course. Much more than what you would get out of a standard humanoid type figure. Even the elbow can bend backward, which is kind of a weird thing you can do with this figure. Elbow rotation isn't the greatest. I mean, you can get this thing up in about a little over a 45-degree angle. I would say, I don't know, 65, 70 degrees or something like that. Can't quite get 90 degrees. Or if it can, I'm not going to push it because it doesn't feel like it wants to go any further. Got a decent expressive range of motion in the head. The neck can tilt up and down. You can get the head all the way down. It's like if he's in a shut-off mode or something like that. The only thing I wish they would have done is give you just a little bit more articulation so you could tilt the head up more. Although, he can turn quite a ways at the waist, so you can bend that figure back and have him looking straight up. So that's pretty cool. The waist can turn down, of course. Twist left and right. I mean, it's a full range of motion for sure on this character. Knees can bend pretty well. There again, ankle rotation is going quite a ways beyond what you could do with a normal humanoid type figure. So, and being a larger figure, it does actually have a good deal of heft, although unsurprisingly, most of that heft is in the torso, the upper body and that kind of thing, because it does have these long skinny limbs, of course. Now, be that as it may, what it does is throw off the center of gravity quite a ways, so you could get the student some decent poses, but you're probably going to find that he has a little less balance than other figures. And I think that could have been resolved a little bit if the feet had a little more weight to them. Don't know exactly how they could have done that. Maybe they could have made them slightly larger. Maybe they could have made them out of metal. I don't know, but something to counterbalance that weight just a little bit so that he's not wobbling so much. But all in all, really good range of motion. For everyone who's seen Rogue One and Andor, this is a robot you definitely do not want to see walking in your direction. One thing I got to point out that's strikingly bizarre to me is it actually has a lot of clear plastic, and you see this in the knee joints and in the elbow joints, and then basically the rest of it is just painted over. So I don't know why they would do this. What was the point of using clear plastic as opposed to just black plastic? I don't know. So what that does is, if you're looking at it closely, is it does have a little bit of a mismatch in some of the plastic and paint parts, and you definitely notice it here in the shoulder and down in the forearm and whatever. A little bit of shiny paint there and then some matte plastic here. And the color does look just a little bit off because of that. And as far as that goes, I would suspect that there's a lot about this figure that's actually hand painted. I don't know for a fact that every K-2SO is going to be a completely unique piece, but I mean, the hand painting does kind of seem to be apparent there. And what I mean by that is, in some cases you have some weird brush strokes and whatever, like on the foot on my copy. It looks like somebody was just sort of practicing here. It has used a pretty good effect on some other spots, you know, around the edge work and that kind of thing. It makes it a little bit worn, a little weather worn and that kind of thing. And there again, when you get real down into the detail here, like you look at these orange painted rings here, there's obviously some missed spots and whatever here. I guess you could attribute that to an intent of weathering. I don't think that's the case, though. I think it's just a little bit of, it's hand painted and there's a little bit of poor craftsmanship as far as that goes, so. And as far as this figure goes, what you get with K-2SO is no accessories. Yes, this is a unique, one-of-a-kind piece, and it's really cool looking and all that kind of thing. But I think at least as far as Rogue One goes, they could have given him something. I mean, the droid carries around a blaster and uses it, for crying out loud. Seems like they could have given him that. He uses a grenade at some point. There could have been something that they could have put in his hands just to kind of flesh out this character a little bit. Give you a little more added value with this figure. Regardless, though, I think it's time to rate this big, lumbering, reprogrammed goofball. Yeah, for details, I would say this figure is really well done. I do notice some very minor flaws with the figure. So if I were to nitpick, yeah, it's not 100% accurate in my opinion. Articulation leaves you nothing wanting. That is hampered a little bit, of course, with its center of gravity being thrown off with those big lanky limbs and that kind of heavier midsection. So basically, yeah, you could pose this pretty much any way you need to, but good luck getting him into some more dynamic poses without having this thing fall over. I think this is going to be one of those figures that definitely needs a peg stand or something like that to keep him upright. As far as accessories, it doesn't have any, so that's a flat 0. Quality of the figure, I would say, is pretty damn good. I mean, the paint application, the justification for that, I would say is a little bit questionable, and it's a little bit lacking in some spots. I mean, yeah, for the most part, this figure does have some pretty good weathering effect, but there are some spots that it very obviously looks like there was just some brushwork done or whatever. And yeah, as far as accuracy, there again, like with details, I would say this is a very, very good representation of this figure, but it's not 100% there. It's pretty darn good, though. And I'm going to give this guy a final rating of 15 out of 25. And that's my rating for K-2SO, as portrayed by the inimitable Mr. Alan Tudyk. So this is part 1 of my Rogue One series, and I will of course be wrapping up this series with part 2, which is going to be focused on the villains. So there again, you have Jyn Erso, you have K-2SO, you got Galen Erso, her father, and you have Bohdi Rook. And again, I may pick up some other Rogue One figures somewhere down the line. Hadn't seen anything that really jumps out as me as something that I need to have. And I would certainly say that it has been advantageous to be jumping into the Black Series kind of late in the game, because many of these figures, yeah, every figure in this lineup I have bought for below retail. The downside of that, though, I definitely have to point out to any up-and-coming collectors, is that yes, you could get many of these figures cheaper, but beware of certain sellers out there online who are selling these and not telling you that they're used figures. 2 of the 4 figures that I have here in this review today are actually used figures, but they weren't sold as such. So don't feel totally ripped off, but I do feel a little bit misled on how that happened. So just something to be aware of. If in doubt and a figure doesn't say that, you should probably ask them before you buy it. That's all I got for you today. So yeah, we'll catch you around on the next review. By the way, Clea Markey is actually Princess Leia. Bye.